Let's begin by meeting William Douglas, the author of this powerful story. Born in Maine, Minnesota in 1898, Douglas was a man of many talents. After earning his degree in English and economics, he taught high school before pursuing a legal career. His path led him to Yale, where he met Franklin D. Roosevelt and became an advisor and friend to the president. Douglas was a passionate advocate for individual rights and served as a Supreme Court justice for 36 years, the longest in history. But before all this, he was just a young boy facing a life-changing fear, one that would shape his outlook forever. Douglas's story, taken from his book of Men and Mountains, is more than just a childhood memory. It's an exploration of fear and how it can grip us sometimes for years. The narrative uses his own experiences to discuss the psychology of fear, making it relatable for anyone who's ever struggled with anxiety or self-doubt. As we follow his journey, we'll see how personal stories can help us understand universal emotions and inspire us to overcome our own challenges. Douglas's fear of water began early. When he was just 3 or 4, his father took him to the beach in California. The waves were powerful, and despite clinging to his father, Douglas was knocked down and submerged. The experience left him breathless and terrified, even as his father laughed it off. This early trauma planted the seeds of fear that would haunt him for years, showing how childhood experiences can have a lasting impact on our lives. Growing up in Yakima, Douglas was constantly warned by his mother about the dangers of the Yakima River. She kept stories of drownings fresh in his mind, reinforcing his aversion to natural bodies of water. Instead, Douglas turned to the local YMCA pool, which seemed much safer. This contrast between the treacherous river and the controlled environment of the pool highlights how our environments and the warnings we receive can shape our fears and choices. The YMCA pool, Douglas was determined to learn to swim. He equipped himself with water wings and, despite feeling self-conscious about his skinny legs, subdued his pride and entered the water. However, the aversion he felt as a child lingered. Even in this controlled setting, the memory of being overwhelmed by water made him uneasy. This scene sets the stage for the pivotal event that would test his courage and resilience. Despite his fears, Douglas began to gain confidence in the pool. He watched other boys mimic their movements and practice paddling with his water wings. Over several visits, he started to feel more comfortable, believing he was finally overcoming his anxiety. This gradual progress is a reminder that facing our fears often requires patience and repeated effort, and that small victories can build the foundation for bigger breakthroughs. One quiet day at the pool, Douglas's progress was shattered. He was alone, waiting for others, when an older, muscular boy entered. Without warning, the boy picked Douglas up and threw him into the deep end. Suddenly, Douglas found himself in a life-threatening situation. This unexpected act of bullying would become the defining moment of his struggle with fear, showing how quickly confidence can be replaced by panic. As Douglas hit the water, he sank quickly to the bottom of the 9-foot deep pool. He tried to stay calm, planning to push off the bottom and float to the surface. But the descent felt endless, and panic began to set in as his lungs screamed for air. This moment captures the terrifying helplessness that can come with sudden danger and the desperate hope that a plan will work when everything feels out of control. Douglas summoned all his strength and pushed off the bottom, expecting to shoot up like a cork. Instead, he rose slowly, surrounded by murky yellowish water. His hands grasped at nothing, and he couldn't get his mouth above the surface. The struggle for air became frantic, and the realization that he was in real danger intensified his fear. This scene vividly illustrates the physical and mental battle that comes with facing a life-threatening situation. Able to stay afloat, Douglas began to sink again. He flailed at the water, swallowing and choking, his legs paralyzed by fear. The sensation of being pulled under was overwhelming, and his attempts to scream were swallowed by the water. The nightmare of drowning became all too real, and Douglas's panic reached new heights. This moment marks the turning point where fear becomes all-consuming, leaving him feeling utterly powerless. As Douglas sank for the second time, sheer terror seized him. He describes the feeling as something no one can understand unless they've experienced it themselves, a paralyzing, uncontrollable fear that freezes the body and mind. Even his screams were trapped inside him. This raw, honest account brings the reader into the heart of his panic, making the experience vivid and unforgettable. In the midst of his terror, Douglas managed to recall his plan, to jump when he hit the bottom. When his toes finally touched the tiles, he pushed off with all his might. But the water still surrounded him, and he found nothing to grab onto: no ropes, no ladders, just the relentless yellow water. The terror deepened, shaking him to his core. This moment shows how even in panic, the mind can cling to hope, however faint. Douglas started to rise again, but only his eyes and nose broke the surface before he sank for a third time. This time he was too exhausted to fight. He inhaled water instead of air, and the world began to fade. The yellowish light disappeared, and a sense of blackness swept over him. In this moment, Douglas's struggle turns from panic to surrender as he drifts toward unconsciousness. With all his strength gone, Douglas relaxed and let himself drift. The fear and terror faded, replaced by a peaceful drowsiness. He felt as if he was floating gently, surrounded by tender arms, and finally slipped into unconsciousness. This description of surrender highlights the strange calm that can come at the edge of life and the thin line between panic and peace. Next thing Douglas remembers is lying beside the pool, vomiting water. The boy who threw him in tried to brush it off as a joke, but others realized how close Douglas had come to death. Weak and trembling, Douglas was carried to the locker room. The physical effects of the ordeal lingered for days. He couldn't eat, and even the slightest effort made him feel sick and shaky. The trauma of the experience left a deep mark on his mind and body. After the incident, Douglas avoided water at all costs. The fear haunted him, making even the thought of swimming unbearable. He never returned to the pool, and the anxiety affected his daily life. This scene shows how a single traumatic event can create long-lasting fears that shape our actions and limit our experiences, often in ways we don't fully understand. Years later, Douglas found himself drawn to the waters of the Cascades, but every time he tried to enter, the old terror returned. Whether wading in rivers or bathing in lakes, the fear would seize him, paralyzing his legs and filling his heart with icy horror. The haunting memory of the pool incident followed him everywhere, ruining his enjoyment of fishing, canoeing, and swimming. This persistent fear became a handicap that limited his life. Douglas's fear of water didn't just affect his recreation, it cast a shadow over his entire life. Fishing trips were ruined and the joy of boating and swimming was lost. No matter where he went, the fear followed him, depriving him of experiences and memories. This scene emphasizes how unchecked fear can rob us of happiness and keep us from fully engaging with the world. Eventually, Douglas decided he could no longer let fear control his life. He resolved to confront his anxiety head-on and learn to swim properly. This decision marked a turning point, showing the power of determination and the importance of facing our fears rather than running from them. Douglas's journey to overcome his phobia would require patience, courage, and the help of a skilled instructor. Douglas found an instructor and began a rigorous training routine. The instructor used a belt and pulley system to guide Douglas back and forth across the pool, gradually helping him build confidence and skill. Each session brought a little more progress but also triggered flashes of the old panic. The process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but Douglas persisted, determined to reclaim his life from fear. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold and Douglas went under, the old terror would return. His legs would freeze and panic would threaten to overwhelm him. But with each repetition, the fear lost a little of its power. The instructor taught Douglas to put his face under water, exhale, and then inhale when he surfaced. Hundreds of repetitions helped Douglas shed his panic bit by bit. The instructor broke down the process of swimming into manageable parts. Douglas practiced kicking at the side of the pool for weeks, gradually regaining control over his legs. Piece by piece, the instructor built a swimmer, integrating each skill into a whole. This methodical approach shows how complex challenges can be overcome by breaking them into smaller, achievable steps. After months of training, the instructor declared Douglas ready. He dove off and swam the length of the pool using the crawl stroke. Although the instructor's work was done, Douglas still felt traces of fear. He tested himself by swimming alone, challenging the old terror to return. Each successful swim built his confidence, proving that he could face his fears and win. Still not fully satisfied, Douglas sought bigger challenges. He traveled to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock, and swam 2 miles across to Stamp Act Island. He used different strokes and faced the old terror only once, laughing it off and continuing on. This test proved to Douglas that he had truly gained control over his fear, even in open water. To be absolutely sure he had conquered his fear, Douglas went west to the Titan and Conrad Meadows, then up to Mead Glacier. At Warm Lake, he stripped and swam across and back just as he'd seen others do. Shouting with joy, he realized that he was finally free from the grip of fear. This triumphant moment marked the end of a long, difficult journey. Douglas reflects on the deep meaning of his experience. Only those who have faced and conquered stark terror can truly understand the sense of release and freedom that follows. He quotes Roosevelt, "All we have to fear is fear itself." The experience taught Douglas that the real terror lies not in death but in the fear of it. Overcoming that fear gave him a new intensity for life. At last, Douglas felt truly released, free to walk the trails, climb the peaks, and brush aside fear. The journey from terror to triumph transformed his outlook, allowing him to embrace life's adventures without hesitation. This newfound freedom was not just about swimming but about living boldly and without the shadow of fear. Douglas's story is also a psychological analysis of fear. He shows how fear can be rooted in early experiences and reinforced by later trauma. But he also demonstrates that fear can be understood, confronted, and ultimately overcome. This insight is valuable for anyone struggling with anxiety or self-doubt, reminding us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to face it. Douglas's vivid descriptions make the reader feel the panic that gripped him as he nearly drowned. Details like the yellowish water, the sensation of sinking, and the paralysis of fear bring the experience to life. By sharing these details, Douglas helps readers empathize with his struggle and understand the overwhelming nature of panic. Douglas's journey shows that persistence is key to overcoming fear. Despite setbacks and repeated panic attacks, he kept practicing, learning, and testing himself. This persistence paid off, allowing him to reclaim his life and enjoy activities he once avoided. The message is clear: persistence and patience can help us conquer even our deepest fears. While Douglas's determination was crucial, the support of his instructor played a vital role in his recovery. The instructor's methodical approach and encouragement helped Douglas break down his fear and rebuild his confidence. This highlights the importance of seeking help and accepting guidance when facing difficult challenges. Douglas's story is about more than just learning to swim. It's a metaphor for overcoming any kind of fear or obstacle. The lessons he learned about persistence, support, and self-belief can be applied to many areas of life, from sports to academics to personal relationships. His journey encourages us to face our own fears with courage and determination. Douglas's use of first-person narration makes his story especially powerful. By sharing his thoughts and feelings directly, he invites readers to experience his journey alongside him. This personal touch creates a sense of intimacy and authenticity, making the lessons more impactful and memorable. If someone else had narrated Douglas's experience, the story might have felt more distant and less personal. The vividness and emotional depth come from Douglas's own words, making the reader feel his fear and triumph. This comparison shows why first-person accounts are often more effective for sharing personal struggles and victories. Douglas's story carries a larger message. Fear is a universal experience, but it doesn't have to define us. By confronting our fears, seeking support, and persisting through setbacks, we can achieve freedom and fulfillment. This message resonates with anyone who has ever struggled with anxiety or self-doubt, offering hope and inspiration. The text encourages readers to share their own stories of overcoming fear. Whether it's learning a new skill, facing a challenge, or dealing with anxiety, sharing experiences can help others feel less alone and more empowered. Acts of courage, big or small, inspire those around us and create a sense of community. Douglas's story is just one example of courage in the face of fear. The text references other stories like Nelson Mandela's struggle for freedom and the family in We're Not Afraid to Die. These examples show that courage and optimism can help people survive and thrive, even under the direst circumstances. The process of overcoming fear often leads to personal growth. Douglas's journey made him stronger, more confident, and more appreciative of life. Reflecting on our own experiences of struggle and triumph can help us recognize how far we've come and motivate us to keep pushing forward. The text encourages readers to write about their own experiences of learning something new. Whether it's a sport, a musical instrument, or another skill, the process often involves fear, struggle, and eventual success. Writing about these journeys can help us process our emotions and celebrate our achievements. Another suggested activity is writing a letter to someone about learning a new skill. Sharing our accomplishments with others not only reinforces our own confidence but can also inspire and encourage those around us. Communication is a powerful tool for building connections and spreading positivity. The text invites readers to learn about water sports in India and the places known for them. Exploring new activities can be a way to challenge ourselves and overcome fears, just as Douglas did. Water sports offer opportunities for adventure, teamwork, and personal growth. The key theme of the unit is understanding and empathizing with others' experiences. By reading stories like Douglas's, we can relate to the emotions and challenges faced by others, building empathy and compassion. This understanding helps us support each other in overcoming fears and achieving our goals. Reflecting on our own fears and how we've overcome them can be a powerful tool for personal development. Self-reflection allows us to recognize patterns, celebrate progress, and set new goals. Douglas's story encourages us to look inward and appreciate our own journeys. The lessons from Douglas's story can be applied to many areas of life. Whether it's facing a fear, learning a new skill, or supporting someone else, the principles of persistence, courage, and empathy remain the same. By applying these lessons, we can overcome obstacles and achieve our full potential. In the end, Douglas's journey is about more than just swimming. It's about the freedom that comes from facing and overcoming our deepest fears. His story reminds us that fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control us. With determination, support, and self-belief, we can break free and live life to the fullest.